recognize the ranking member for opening statement. I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement. I yield back.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Distinguished gentlelady from California, Mary Bono. Gentlelady is recognized.
Chair now recognizes the lady from California is recognized.
I'm pleased to introduce Congresswoman Mary Bono, former U.S. Representative for California's Inland Empire and Desert Region from 1998 to 2013.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Welcome to Sagely Speaking. I'm your host, Mary Bono, and I'm so happy you're here. On this podcast, I hope to bring you insightful conversations with a variety of guests from all walks of life, people with stories, wisdom, and perspectives that inspire and inform. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, and if you feel inspired, leave a 5-star rating. It helps us reach more listeners like you. Now let's dive into today's conversation. Hello, and welcome to Sagely Speaking. One of the best parts about having a podcast is the opportunity to really pick your guests' brains or grill them sometimes, but to get information, to get insight. And today is going to be one of those episodes for me. Harmon Kong is going to be a fascinating guest. He has spent over 2 decades reshaping the landscape of wealth management, co-founding Apriem Advisors, which has a mission to deliver exceptional financial services rooted in family values and a personalized approach inspired by the concept of ohana, which is the Hawaiian term that embodies the spirit of family and community. Harmon enjoys spending his free time supporting causes he and his family care most about, which are, I'm sure among many more, but extreme poverty, anti-human trafficking, clean water initiatives, and very timely disaster relief. Harmon cherishes spending time traveling with his family, exploring the outdoors, having a good meal with friends, or simply embarking on new adventures, any moment that brings people closer together. Now, he's here because he has a book. His debut book is called Values Over Valuables. The subtitle is Daring to Live the Life Money Can't Buy. Now, that means a lot of things to me, and we're going to jump right into this and delve into this. Harmon, welcome to Sagely Speaking.
Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me. What an honor to be here with you. I'm excited for you to pick my brain.
Oh, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to get all sorts of free advice out of you and replay this episode often to relive that free advice. But let's start with this. Financial advisor, you're a numbers guy, and that entails an awful lot. But why did you decide you needed to write a book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually am not one to write things because, as you said, I'm a numbers person. And in fact, in my family, there were 5 of us. My dad was a college professor. So if you were to ask my parents, who's the most likely to write, it would not be me. I did not get his skills in writing. I found that numbers were my comfort zone. So this actual journey of writing the book actually started in 2019 and, finished in June of 2024. It came out recently in November. So talk about a 5-year journey to write a few pages. So it was not an easy journey for me, Mary, but I finished. So here it is. Here we are.
Here we are. But you said, you know what? Darn it, I am going to sit down. I'm going to take 5 years to write this book, but I'm going to do it. And so what is the passion or inspiration? What just told you to say to yourself, I'm going to do this. The world needs to hear what I have to say.
Yeah, thank you. As you read it, it's not, there's not a lot of numbers in it because, I spent a lot of time in numbers. And for me, there was something that hit me like 15 years ago that I found to be a pretty profound study. And it was a study that suggested and found that 70% of the next generation loses the funds they inherit from mom and dad. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. And then the study further said that 90% of the third generation, which would be in my life, my grandkids, lose what they inherit. And so I was extremely struck by this. So I wanted to understand this study. I called the people who did the study, and they said they studied wealthy families. And I thought, well, hey, I work with wealthy families. That doesn't seem like that is consistent. And they reaffirmed that, yes, that is. And I said, well, wealthy families typically have lawyers, money managers, advisors that advise the family on how to protect the family castle, right? The valuables of the family. And so we build moats around the castle to make sure it's protected and cared for. So that could transcend across generations. And even though that's done, it doesn't really work. And so for me, I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. So I wanted to understand, how is that even possible? So I starting different kind of conversations with my clients, like how questions like, how prepared do you think your adult kids are to step into your shoes if something were to happen to you? And I started hearing really profound statements like, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, can I give them a negative? Or how about a 3 out of 10? And inevitably, it wasn't good. And then I also found that, wow, that's the one thing that keeps the people up at night, is worrying about their family, right? Because our family is really important to us, and we want to take care of them, but sometimes taking care of them could translate into a different way of taking care of them. So I wanted to understand what that was, and I realized was sort of is the title of the book. The title of the book, by the way, came after the book was written. They say when you write a book, you don't really know what the title is until you're finished, right?
It
But
writes
I
itself,
wanted
right?
I wanted to focus on not so much the valuables, which is a tendency that we focus on, especially in the world of wealth management, but really to focus on what are the values that you're leaving behind. And I think that's what was really missing.
I think about this often for various reasons. I'm in the, planning stage, as always, financial planning and legacies and all sorts of stuff like that. And I think about today's kids, and I'm going a little off track, but it's all going to come back nicely if I'm lucky here. I think kids no longer understand value necessarily the way they used to generations ago. And things come a little bit easier now from almost all kids, not all. Well, I'll admit that, of course, unfortunately, but for a lot of kids, it's the $100 sneakers, the $100 pairs of jeans, and it's multiple sets of each, and things are easy to come by. And I think value itself, understanding what something is worth, whether that's in terms of, gee, how hard did I have to work to earn this, or whatever it might be that determines what value itself is. What do you say about generations now that it's just everything is a lot easier? And I sound like an old generation, like I walked both ways to school uphill in the snow kind of stuff. And I
Yep.
don't mean to sound like that, but what do you think with value and
Well,
understanding what things are worth?
to your point, I think sometimes we all sound like that. It's like we start to sound like our parents, right? Yeah, I remember when I had to walk miles to school, or just money doesn't grow on trees, right? Work
Yeah.
hard. Well, along with the statistics of generational wealth typically doesn't move across generation, is this underlying reality that trillions of dollars are going to go to the next generation. And in fact, Fortune, I cite this in the book, that Fortune did a study and found that the number is somewhere between 84 to 129 trillion dollars that is pent up in a generation of silent generations. And we're I'm in the baby boom generation, and all that's going to go to the next generation, the X and the millennials. So really is another group that did a study and thinks it's somewhere around 100 trillion. Either way, it's a lot of money, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we talk about value or valuables, a generation is going to inherit that. And so here's an example of where values and valuables can get intertwined and send the wrong message. So I will ask a family, what's your core value? Or give me top 5, right? And they'll say, well, hard work is a core value because that's how we got where we were. We started this business from nothing, and you hear all these stories of hard work, right? Yet we talk to our financial advisors and our attorneys, and basically we would create a moat around an incredible castle that is going to be handed off to a generation who really doesn't have to work, because if work is just about financial reward, if the finances are already enough, then how do you instill this value of hard work if you're setting your family up to not have to work? So it's a rhetorical question that I'll often ask some of my clients is, how do you instill hard work if hard work from what you knew it to be was a way to provide for a lifestyle? And so that's just an example of how kids can get, or their kids or adults can kind of grow up with this and hear a different message of, well, what is value, right? But here's the thing is that I do believe in the book, I talk about defining and discovering your values, Mary. And I think everyone has a set of values that it's through their lens of life, right? How you process information, how you make decision, how you behave is based on some core values that you are rooted with, sort of like your DNA of life, right? And oftentimes they're not spoken. They're unspoken. It's just who you are. The question is, why not just have it out there, right? Why not just discover your values, know what your values are, and really think about maybe this question: do your kids know what your values are? And so I challenge my reader to discover your values, know what your values are, and share those values through stories and how those values came about. And I think these are the conversations that are missing. To your point, we tend to say value is equated by a dollar, and that's what makes it valuable. And we all know that, the value of yourself is not in your assets, right? It's not in your stuff. It's not your things. It's in many other things. And those are the things in conversations that I think are missing within the context of an opportunity that we have before us with all this incredible amount of wealth that's going to go from one generation to the next, when statistically it shows they're not going to do a very good job at retaining it. So,
yeah. And then I was thinking about this when I listened to you, the difference between our generation as baby boomers and the next. When we were kids, God, yeah. Mary, this is getting annoying. But, we had in school, we were taught some basic finances. You were taught to balance a checkbook and some basic financial, principles, and when you're kicked out of the nest, how to fly. But it's such a different world now where, kids are using Apple Pay and Zelle and, let's go down the list. And it's a whole new world. How do you expect to, and I'm sure you've navigated these rough waters, but it's not as simple as make sure there's enough money in your bank account to cover your bills. It's so much more complicated than that. Do you go into that in the book?
Yeah, I do. And, I give examples of how we in my family, how we taught our kids about financial responsibility. And I think every parent in any generation would say, it's probably a good idea to teach your children some level of personal financial responsibility, and what does that look like? So you are absolutely right. I think what's interesting is, and I go back to my days, and I remember we had to take a home economics class where we had to balance a checkbook, but kids don't even know what a checkbook is, or they don't even write checks. My kids don't even own a checkbook. So I can't use that as an example. I have balance your books, balance your checkbook. And so how do we teach them personal financial responsibility? And I think what's interesting too, is you hit on something really, really important, is that I raised 4 kids, and all 4 kids went to college, and all 3 are married, but they're all working, right? None of them had a class in personal finance from primary school, middle school to high school, and even college. And I'll tell you a quick story, and I tell this in the book, is that my daughter was a social work major. She got her master's in social work, and she went to private university. So I went to go get her checked in her freshman year, right? And she went to go meet with the academic counselor, and the counselor, I said, hey, can I come in and sit down? And they said, actually, no, it's not customary, because it's the first time your daughter is treated like an adult. So she, we're going to make decisions for her next 4 years. And so I said, I know, can I just sit in the back and I'll be quiet? So he kind of hummed and hawed and said, yes, okay. He brought 2 chairs in the back for me and my wife. And he's mapping out her 4 years, telling her, this is what your schedule looks like this semester and the next and the next. And I couldn't help myself, Mary. I'm in the back going, oh, I need to say something. Hello.
You're in the helicopter blades right now, spinning around.
And he looks at me and says, "Can I help you?" I said, "I just have a question. Could she? Is there a way that she could take like an intro to business or an economics class?" And my daughter's making that face like, "Dad, be quiet." And I'm thinking, I'm paying for this. I have a right, right? And then he says, "Well, do you want her to graduate in 4 years or 5 years?" And of course, I go, "Oh, 4 years sounds good to me."
Yeah.
So, so the challenge is that if it's not in a traditional academic experience, and then our kids come out of college and graduate and live life, they're going to learn vicariously through experience, right? And some of that might be painful through mistakes. So I think it's an interesting thing because we have this incredible amount of wealth that's going to go from one generation. And then we have an academic system that really hasn't provided some level of practical life skills when it comes to managing personal finance. And all that's going to come together. And so again, this is part of the problem and why I think, hey, this is probably something I should share or talk about because it is the one thing or many things, but it is, I'd say, top five of what some of us lose sleep over, right? What do you worry about? You can have a family who's very financially secure, and I talk about this in the book. Is that I think financial freedom has three levels. The first level is security, and most people think security is freedom because if I have enough, I can do whatever I want. But if you're kept up at night because you're worried about things, and you're not actually free because you don't have that level of peace of mind. So when we talk about peace of mind, top five would say, I worry about my kids. Right? It's natural. What do you worry about? Well, I don't know if they can handle all this. I mean, it's complicated. We have businesses, we have assets, and I haven't really talked to them about it. Well, why haven't you talked to them about it? So it's those things that I think are missing links. So that's kind of, I'm getting a little too much in the book, but
Oh,
that,
I'm loving it. Keep going. Yeah.
so those are kind of the things, and kind of going back to values. I think if you can identify your values, and I have a worksheet that you go through, and then I take it a step further and say, do you have a vision for your family? Does the family have a mission statement? Does the family hold regular meetings? Because we started holding regular meetings when my youngest were 8, because I really felt strongly that why aren't we doing this for families, but we do this for our businesses? I think everyone who works for an organization or develop an organization has core principles, core values. These are like our corporate guiding principles. And then we draft these really cool vision statements of what we're about and a mission statement. And then we meet with our team regularly, right? We have regular meetings to talk about, are we tracking on our mission? Are we accomplishing our mission? Yet we spend an exorbitant amount of time professionally doing this. So my rhetorical question is, why aren't we doing this with our families? And so I started doing this when the kids were little. And when they were little, we started doing monthly meetings. And then now we do annual meetings. So our annual meetings, because 3 of our kids are married, I have spouses now. So now they've turned into half-day meetings that usually are sometimes a destination because I got to incentivize them. Like when they were 8 years old, I had to incentivize them to come to the meetings. And as adults, I still have to incentivize them. But we still do them, and they're something that it's just what we do as a family. So
even though you're not all together in one family business. Or
yeah,
you are, or both. It's a hybrid.
That's what's been interesting because they're all kind of spread out. We have to become more like destination retreats. We'll do like a family gathering. Like we had our last one in Idaho because they all came up for the New Year's break. So I said, oh, perfect time to meet. But what's been fun, Mary, is now they're kind of suggesting ideas. Hey, can we do the next one here or the next one there? So I try to involve a little bit of family bonding fun time, but also we'll take a half a day and have a family meeting. So that's how we're doing things. I'm encouraging families to do this because I think it's really important that families have these discussions. I get asked a lot, how early do you start, and is it too late to start, depending on your age? And my response is, it's never really too early when they're young. If you're a grandparent, when they're young, it's really the idea of meeting. So don't get caught up in the content or feel like you have to have this elaborate agenda and talk about certain topics. I mean, the idea of having a young kid come to the meeting is really this idea that the family loves to gather, and that's something's really important, right? I think
Absolutely.
another thing, like, dinner was really important in our family. We didn't eat until dad got home. And I know a lot of friends, just because life got busy, that, it was hard to eat together, right? Because you got soccer and dance and homework, and it was eat when you can. But for us, I wanted to hold on to that in our family. So dinner time was really sacred. But it's the idea of gathering is really the most important thing. And then as they get older, you can start to fill in topics that are important to discuss. And then as they get older, of course, it gets a little more formal, a little more, more like an agenda because they're age appropriate. But the idea is that they love getting together and they love meeting, and that's really the point of it.
So are you sort of the chairman of the board of this family meeting?
Yeah, I like to think I am, but I think we've tried to navigate our meetings to where it's a safe space for everyone to talk and share. We talk about our struggles, our goals. A lot of us talk about is the future, the goals. I'm very practical too. So I recall a time when we had a serious meeting with our kids when most of them were in college. I think the youngest were probably seniors in high school, and I borrowed a friend's conference room. So it was that boardroom style because I wanted to set a different tone that this meetings, we're going to have a little more serious discussion. A lot of them were done at the kitchen table or something a little more casual. But this particular one, we were going to talk about some important things.
Dad's mad.
Yeah.
Dad's mad.
Yeah, the chairman's in house. But no, I'm not. I sometimes will start. But I think what's happened now is all our kids like to talk. So it's more, okay, take that talking stick away. It's my turn. So
That's fun. Well, when you work with your clients, is there a top value that you hear coming out of families that they all come to be a very charitable family or whatever it might be? What value do you get the most from your clients? What are you hearing they believe are their values?
yeah, that's a great one. I think family is an important value. And so if family is important, how does that reflect in your family? Because there's a lot of different family dynamics that go on. Hard work is a core value to a lot of families. Education is a core value to a lot of my clients. Faith is a core value. Philanthropy could be generosity. I would say generosity. Generosity was one of our core five. And so how do you teach a kid generosity at a young age, right? So those are the things that you get kind of fun to do as you sort of get creative on how do you teach generosity. Just different things. So I think our clients have a wide spectrum of different values. We try to understand what they are and then just try to have conversations to how the finances reflect those values. And that's what can send mixed message. Like I talked about a family who says, are really what's important, if my kids get anything from me, it's that they work hard. Look, so hard work obviously is a core value, and or education. I think education is really important. I want to make sure they get a good education. So then it's, okay, what is a good education? Because some families send a message that only get a degree in accounting or finance or engineering because education equates to money. Well, is that what education's about? Because you might be sending a mixed message that going for a degree just to get a good job is really about the education. It's about making a good paycheck. And so you really have to kind of drill into that. So I never forced my kids to study anything that I thought would be a good degree. I said, follow your heart. And so one of them went off to the military. He obviously didn't do that because he thought he was going to make money. My daughter became a mental health therapist now today. She's a social work major, and she certainly didn't do that because she was going to make a lot of money. But so education, what does that mean, and how does that how do you reflect that value and why is it important? So,
Well, which comes shining through what you're saying is character. What is your character? And are you going to stand by a strong character that you're going to be proud of throughout your life too? I would
yeah,
assume, at least that's what I would put on my worksheet. And I know you have worksheets, you offer worksheets.
yes.
And I would put that there too. Are you, proud of what you're doing? And of course we all make mistakes. I guess I would throw that out there for sure. But
Yeah.
tell us about your worksheets. You can help people figure out their values, because I don't think many of us take the time to figure it out. I don't know what my values are. I'm busy on this treadmill, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you help them get there?
Yeah. Well, I start out with a sheet that has roughly around, I think it was 49 or 50 words. And I say, circle 10. So if you're a couple, here's an example. I would say, you circle 10 and you circle 10. So do it separately. Don't do them together, because if you do them together, there's influence. So you want to do them separately. And then once you got your 10, compare your notes, and you might see overlap. And if you find overlap of 5 or 7, then those become your core values as a household. And then from there, it's what about these values? Can you draft a vision? Just like a company, right? You can't draft a vision and mission unless you know what your core values are. So then I say, okay, now let's talk about a vision that encompasses those core values. And a vision is simply a forward-thinking statement, right? And the mission is what we do now. And so sometimes people get confused between a mission and a vision statement, because they kind of almost sound the same. But if you think about it, a vision statement is almost like this idea that you're going to do something that encompasses your values, but you may not ever achieve it. So you're moving toward this vision, or you envision this. And so that's the goal, the ideal. And then there's the real, sort of the ideal and the real. And the real is, where are we now and how do we move forward in this? And that becomes your mission. So it's not an easy task. I wouldn't say it's easy, but I do give a worksheet, and there is a playbook that I offer that you can download for free, and you can fill it in. It's a PDF that you can fill it in and develop.
Where can they get that, Harmon?
That would be on my author website, which is just harmonkong.com. And you'll see download the family playbook. So it is what's in the back of the book, but in a little more worksheet playbook formula. So it's a little easier to use because it's a PDF. And then you can start to develop it that way. And then try to create some template. If you need to have a family meeting, how would you draft that? So I think, again, when you're young, I wouldn't really necessarily have an agenda, because kids aren't going to really look at that. So you might start out with highs and lows for the day, highs and lows for the week. And we would do topics like, they would talk about their friends, and I would say, what's a friend? Tell me why he's your friend. Tell me why she's your friend. And so we talk about what is a friend. And so you try to find topics that are age appropriate for them. And then as they go older, of course, those things change and whatnot. But that's how we do it. So
this is fascinating blueprint. But tell me a little bit about your subtitle, Daring to Live the Life Money Can't Buy. I mean, I like you have a place in Idaho. I live in Colorado. We live around a lot of people who live lives that money can't buy. They're hikers, skiers, boarders, fishermen, fisherwomen, whatever it might be. But can you tell us more about that? I have a feeling mean a lot more than just being a good skier.
Yeah, right. So I use the word daring because, to your point, I don't think we step up to this challenge enough yet. We inherently know it's probably a good thing to do, to figure out what matters most. And what you'll find is not the investments that we actually own in the valuables that we have. It's the people in our life.
Yes, and Mary, you're touching on something that was really vital at the time. And again, credit goes to that.
We'll continue with our interview in a moment, but first I'd like to thank my sponsors. Lucy Pet Foods is the leader in gut health. Their formulas for life feature prebiotic, balanced fiber that nourishes your dog and cat's total health. Every purchase helps support the Lucy Pet Foundation, a 501c3 charity helping animals. Save 15% off your first order and use the promo code SAGELYSPEAKING, all one word, and you will get free shipping at lucypetfoods.com. If you're committed to tackling the opioid and addiction crises, then you need to be at the 2025 RX Summit. Use code SAGELY, that's SAGELY, for an extra $100 off. Join top experts and professionals as we share strategies for prevention, deflection, treatment, and recovery. Don't miss this chance to be part of the change. Head over to rx-summit.com to register now. That's rx-summit.com for an additional $100 off.
As the mom of two amazing kids, I know how important it is to keep our children safe. And that's why I talk to them about the dangers of drugs. It is not always an easy conversation, but it's essential. By talking openly, we can help our kids understand the risks, which will help them make smart choices. Create a safe place for our kids to ask questions and share their feelings. Together, we can empower them to just say no. Start the conversation today. Your kids' future depends on it. The greatest gift is a conversation.
And now, back to our interview.
So you're going to get the greatest returns by investing in the people of your life. I'm giving my reader a template of where does that begin? Where do you begin to reflect relationships within the family context in your life, rather than spending time on just building your net worth. And what you find is that this isn't something that just for people and families of capacity. It's for everyone. It's something that we all should do. I mean, I come from modest means. My father was a college professor, and he had 5 kids, which I thought, as a college professor, doesn't sound like a smart idea. but so values were not in our stuff. I mean, I was the third of. I had 2 older brothers. You know what that means, Mary? I got all their hand-me-downs.
I am the baby of 4, so I get it.
So yeah, I didn't get valuables. I had to think, okay, well, I got to get some value out of this pair of jeans that have gone through to my 2 older brothers. So I joke and I tell my younger brother, I said, I destroyed it so you wouldn't. I saved you the burden of having a 4th reusable jean. So I destroyed all the clothes and shoes my parents gave me for my older brother. But yeah, daring to live the life money can't buy. It's a framework of just the way you think. It's, money can't buy you, the old adage, right? Money can't buy you happiness. It can't buy you relationships within your family. And the things that I talk about are the things that have nothing to do with money. What I say is that money can exasperate a family or relational dysfunction. And I say this because every year, unfortunately, I've worked with families where they're fighting because someone has passed away. And it seems tragic, right? Like the time where you want to come together the most is when the family's fighting the most. And sometimes there's hurt feelings that are brought up from the past. And I just think, wow, Mom and Dad would be so disappointed to hear their adult children fighting over things. So that pains me to think that. But I think all of us can look back, or even look today and say, you know what? Every family has had a story where money has broken relationships, right? I mean, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it doesn't transcend down well. Because maybe the values aren't there. So when we say family is a value, so when people say, why is family a value? What does that mean to you? And I say, I talk about this in my book about ohana, right? It's the Hawaiian word for family. It's, if you think about family in that context, yes, we say things that might regret. We do things that might hurt each other, but we're still family. So family is about unity. It's about supporting each other constantly, no matter what happens, right? You're just, it's that constant in your life. And if your family can't provide that, then I don't know. Everyone has a different idea of what family is, but for me, that's just how I think of family. Family is unity. And in our family meetings, I have told my kids that it'd be the most disappointing thing for me and mom would be that, so for some reason you guys don't get along, or you guys stop talking for some reason, and it would just kind of break your heart, right? But it happens, and so why does it happen? And so you have to kind of go through this and think about what can you do, what guardrails can you put up in your own family to make sure that doesn't happen. So Daring to Live the Life Money Can't Buy is about things like that. It's about being able to come to the table and talk about these things, and to figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen. And I just think sometimes money can get in the way and exasperate a dysfunction that might already be there. So
Absolutely. I've seen that all too often. And I don't know what your opinion is on this, but do you often see families that you're surprised that everything fell apart after a loved one died? They were getting along great, everything's fine, and then suddenly you never would have guessed it, that this family would fracture. And I think you've sort of intimated that, but it seems to me, I would guess that it's obvious, well, this family's going to fall apart or have a temporary glitch in their relationships. But that's what is saddest to me, or when you see somebody that you did not anticipate that or see it. And of course, planning and estate planning is so critically important to help avoid a lot of that. But are people able to do adequate estate planning that can prevent that from happening in the family?
Yeah. Well, you raise a really good point, and there's a lot of reasons why. But I think the more common issues that I've experienced and work with families that are not getting along after someone passes away is this idea of fairness. Like, what is fair? And for whatever reason, this topic comes up, and it's, well, it wasn't fair when mom and dad did this to you, and I did not get that. And so somehow there's an entitlement of fairness, like, well, one for you, one for me, two for you, two for me. Wait, two for you, three for what? That doesn't sound right. And so it's almost like, now's the time I'm going to voice my disapproval of how unfair I feel I was treated. And so this is a really common thing, Mary, and it's very disappointing. And so I talk a little bit about this book, and I say, there's a subchapter I say, is equal the same thing as fair? And I want to share with you how I address it with my kids. So I asked my kids one day in a meeting, they're a little bit older, high school, and I said, do you think me and mom are fair to you all? And they kind of looked and said, yeah, I mean, and then I said, what if I told you we were not fair? If the idea of fair is equal, one for you, one for you. And they go, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. And then I said to my daughter, I said, hey, what sport did you do in high school? And she said, competitive cheer. Well, I'm a cheer dad, right? So I embrace that. Cheer is probably one of the most expensive sports in high school.
It's amazing. I didn't expect that.
I thought it was football, but it's not. I mean, my kids went to a school, and my daughter did competitive cheer. All the travel they do, all the uniform, the coaching. There's a private coach for this and private coach for that. I mean, it was a lot, And then my daughter said, yeah, I did cheer. And I go, yeah, that was really expensive. In fact, I said, roughly, this is what it would cost every year to have you do cheer. And you started in 7th grade and did it all the way through high school. And then I asked the two boys, we have twins. I said, hey, boys, what sport did you do in high school? And they said, track and field. I said, okay, Jim, track and field cost, it was like a donation. I gave $250 and it covered your pair of sweats. And then for equipment, you had a pair of spikes that lasted like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in some cases. And I go, so do you think, to be fair, that I should give you a check for the difference, or give you money for because they don't know what a check is, right? I said, give you money for the difference of what I spent on your sister versus what I paid for you guys. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I go, and they said, no. I go, well, exactly. So what I'm pointing to you is that what is not fair is actually okay. And I said, and they're like, why are you talking about this? I said, because do you know that families fight about things like this long into the future about things like this? And what I'm saying,
Yeah, this is important.
so I would say, what I'm saying to you is that first off, we don't treat you fair. And more importantly, life is not fair. Right? That's the big lesson here is that life is not fair. And if you go through life with a balance sheet in your head, always thinking, life should be fair, then you're really actually going to set the wrong expectation for your growing adolescent kid who's going to become an adult one day and constantly look at life as not fair. And then when it comes to the family estate, the same thing's going to be applied. Well, it wasn't fair. Mom gave you a new car. You wrecked one car, then you got another car. They're always bailing you out. And that's just not right. And I should be compensated for that somehow. And now I'm going to get the compensation because I'm the executor and the trustee now. So go ahead, get a lawyer up, and it happens a lot, unfortunately.
Right. But now that you think of it, you got my mind to work. And my sister she became an equestrian. You talk about an expensive sport, horses, boots, saddles. I was a gymnast. I got a leotard and some dues to a gym.
So you relate to this story. Good.
But, I hear you loud and clear, and it's impossible to have this ledger in your head and keeping tabs on where things go. Life doesn't work that way, whether it's fair or not. I mean, one child's pursuit and passion might be something entirely different. One of my nephews is a pilot.
Yeah.
And, you talk about early on, and he became very enthusiastic at quite a young age, and finally, between his parents and himself, bought a little plane. And then his brother's a very successful plumber. So you look at those two, you talk about the ledger, and obviously I'm hoping they don't see this podcast because I'm going to create some issues, but it's not, and I think a lot about what you're saying too. My husband chose a career that was his passion, and that was to fly. He became a naval aviator and then went on to become an astronaut. But that was what he wanted to do since he was a little boy. And he always says, it was a privilege to do it. And he flew for the Navy and NASA. So he loves that he never had to pay for any gas to fly.
That's great.
But he always says to kids when he talks to them that if you follow your passion and you do what you love to do and what truly speaks to you, you'll never feel like you actually work a day in your life.
Yeah.
You'll be so driven to it, so passionate for it, love everything that you do. And it sounds like that's what you let your kids do. So I'm an art history major, definitely not the most profitable thing I could have gone into. Had I known, I would have pursued like architecture or something, but in any event, it all worked out okay.
Yeah.
But if you do, if you instill that in your children, and you opened this podcast with us, fly into what you want to do, what your passion is, and hopefully it all works out.
Yeah, it's tough, as a parent. I think, if you talk about parenting, and not that this is a parenting podcast, but some of this relates to you're dealing with, what they say, pay now or pay later. Right? But it's easy to send the wrong message, right? I think parents do a lot of that, especially kids going off to college. Like, get a really good high test score so you can get into really good college and study something that's going to make you a lot of money. I have a lot of friends whose kids actually did that and then changed careers after they graduated, realizing I didn't actually want to do this. Well, why did you do it? Like my wife's a good example. She studied in accounting because she was told this narrative that get a degree in accounting because you'll always find work. She hates accounting. She's probably she would have been better at an art history major. She loves art. She loves the creative process. She's like, why did I get a degree in accounting? Because they told me to, and that was the way I made them proud. Look at, she's getting a degree in accounting. She's going to be a CPA someday. Well, whose life are you living? And I think that's the challenge as a parent and an adult is we tend to want to live and see their life unfold before us as the way we see it should. And that's where I think the challenges become. But, treating kids fair and right is I think extremely important in the context of family, because you do want to send that right message. And so with our kids, we certainly wanted them to follow their passion. We even took it another step further, an example, and said, let's flash forward, and let's say you're all married and you all have kids, and one of you has a child that has special needs and will require additional expense to raise that kid or have special services. And so mom and dad, we've decided to help you. And it's costing much more than what we would give the other grandkids. Do you think we should just kind of say, well, if it costs this, then we should give an equal amount to all the grandkids and all the families? And again, they went, no, of course not. That's right. And then I said, well, what if I'm gone? What if we're gone? What would you do then? Let's just say there's this family asset and that it's going to cost an extra $50,000 for this child. Do you think it's fair to give 50, then just give it to 50 to Haley because Haley doesn't need it, but it's only fair, right? 50, 50, 50, one for one, one for one. And they kind of looked at me a little stunned. Well, wait, you're not here now? Oh, no, I'm not. I'm gone. You guys are in charge. And so they're actually stunned. They didn't know how to answer that. And then I just went back to, well, okay, let me just take that variable away and say, we are here. What would we do? And they said, well, without a doubt, you'd give it to Troy for his child that has extra needs. And we wouldn't have a problem with that. I said, okay, well, there's your answer, even when I'm gone, because that again, that's fair. It's fair because, that's what happens in a family. Families care about each other. They look out for each other. There's that unity of being together. It's more important to be together than it is apart because of a money matter. And I think that's where families can, as you've seen, and I've seen both, we run into trouble because we're not clearly articulating what does that look like? What is family? What is family? So it's important to have these discussions, and that's why family meetings I'm a big fan of that. I just think families need to meet more regularly. And, a couple years ago, actually for a couple years in a row, my company got an award. I always think of this award as the best award because it is an award by my employees, and we get an award for being the best small company to work for. And I thought, man, that's so cool. What if we got awards for the best family to live in? And then, right? So I say that in the book, I say that as more of a sort of vision casting. Like, what if you got an award for the best family to live in? And then what would that look like? And that's what we ought to be striving for. And then what does that look like? So.
Wow. Yeah. Best family to live in. I have to ponder on that one for a while, for sure. But there's the flip side of this we have to give, you mentioned Haley, but we have to give Haley extra money. But the flip side of that, and for me personally, the flip side of that is to be independent, to be capable and self-sufficient.
Right.
So you would never say, well, of course I deserve it. I think I would prefer to say I'm proud of the fact that I don't need it.
Yes.
Or that I, deserve it's not an entitlement. So I think that the healthier kids or healthier adult kids, healthy adults would say, I am proud that I need less.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't take away from other values that are equally as important. Mm-hmm. And so finding your passion is really important, that our family found what drives them, sort of what is your passion. And my daughter jokes about, I use my daughter a lot because she was a social work major. She said after her first year, she came back from school. She goes, hey, Dad, guess what? So people ask me two questions. The first is, what's your major? And I said, well, everyone asks. You're a freshman, right? And she goes, I tell them social work. And she goes, I get two responses. First response is, oh, that's hard work. And then she goes, the second response is, oh, you're not going to make a lot of money doing that. So this is like she first came back from her first semester during the break, and then she says, Dad, so am I supposed to pick something that's easy, that makes a lot of money? Something like what you do? She was messing with me. And I go, no, honey. And this is where I had to quote, no, right? I mean, she's just going to live with me forever. I don't care, right? My only daughter. But I always had to reaffirm her and say, no, honey, you do what you think you're going to be good at, because, if you're good at what you do, you will be a subject matter expert and you will help a lot of people.
Yes.
And she goes, I said, it's more about that than it is making money. And so she pursued that. I'm happy to say she's pivoting just this year into private practice. She's a therapist and she works with mainly trauma patients. So she's not, and she married an engineer, so that's good. So she is off my payroll. But it is a reminder that it's important that you find out what you want to do, and I think when you do find, here's the thing, I say this in the book too, is that I kind of quote Warren Buffett's quote, which I love. He says, "You want to give your kids enough to do something, but not so much they do nothing." And I think that's true with us. I mean, if we think that all we're trying to do is just leave them with a financial legacy, then you're probably going to fall into that statistics that it probably won't last past 3 generations. So it has to be more than that. And so for me and my family, it's come down to this, and I think it comes down to this, is that I want to give my kids not just something to live on. I want to give them something to live for. And what is that? And that's a question that we all can kind of sit and think about. Am I just leaving my family something to live on, or am I actually giving them something to live for? And when you think about that, it's your values. That's what you live for, is these values that you hold, that you already have. They just need to be communicated maybe a little better, or written down at least at a minimum.
That's a perfect summation of the book, and I think everything that you're talking about. But I do want to ask you one last series of questions, if I might.
Sure.
How often do you advise people in that position with the wealth that will be passed down? How often do you advise them, spend it, travel the world, whatever you want to do, travel, buy things, whatever. How often do you tell folks to spend it, go have experiences? Yeah. I was, when I read Values Over Valuables, Daring to Live the Life Money Can't Buy, I was thinking, man, he's going to make me want to go parachuting or something that I have no desire to do. But that's what he's going to tell me to do, spend my money on parachuting. Yeah. How wrong am I?
Yeah, no, first off, it's something that I try to bring early on the conversation. So the question, most people will say, well, yeah, we're here because we want to do better. And to do better means a lot to different people. When you think of it from a financial perspective, it's how do we make the funds the most efficient? Efficient meaning less taxes, more for the family, right? Wealth accumulation. How do we accumulate more? So my rhetorical question is, give me an example of what life looks like if your net worth were to double or triple or quadruple. Tell me what life looks like. And really what I'm asking them is, what is the purpose of quadrupling your net worth? I don't ask it that way. I just say, describe to me what life looks like. And sometimes it looks the same, right? So I said, okay, so it looks the same. And then, so basically, and I'll do an assessment, and I'll say, based on everything that I can see, you're financially secure. You have more than you need, and you can spend on anything. You can go anywhere, do anything you want. So what do you want to do? And sometimes they don't know what that means. And then so I'll ask, how much do you think is enough? A little bit more could be the answer. Sometimes people don't know. And quite honestly, to be very honest, Mary, a lot of financial advisors don't ask that question, because there's a ulterior sort of benefit of more is always better, right? As the maybe the wealth manager, well, don't I get paid more when they make more? So more, yeah, let's just make more. But it really doesn't add any value to one's life, right?
Right.
And I know that you have lots of friends and people that that have more than they need. But here's the thing: is that There are a lot of people who are financially secure, but a lot of people are not financially free. And they're not free for two reasons. One is they don't have peace of mind. There's things that keep them up at night. They're restless, they're worried, they have anxiety. And so spending more isn't necessarily going to calm that anxiety or get them better sleep at night. They might have fun doing it and they can afford it, but what is the things that keep them up at night? And I would say one of the things that keep them up at night, and there's several, but one of the top five is still the next generation. They're worried about the kids. And so we like to address those issues too. But third to that would be what's it for, right? And so this is where we get into conversation about, well, if you're not going to spend it, then you can afford to give it away. And this is kind of ironic, right? Because I'm their wealth manager and I'm telling them to give their money away. It kind of sounds counterproductive, but here's what I've learned is that the happiest people are the most generous people. Have you ever noticed that?
Yep.
Generous people are the most happiest people. And so if I can find that financial resources actually has a purpose beyond living to self, I actually get a really great client who's generous, who they've moved into a generosity phase. I've helped families set up private foundations because they think, oh no, that's for rich people. I go, well, hello, I don't know if you know this, but kind of are rich. But what it's been neat is to see how families can find causes they care about. And I find that when you move from financial security, peace of mind, and a sense of purpose of what's it all for, that's great. I mean, you have an ideal person in my mind. You have one of the most happiest people on the planet. And that's actually the fun of my work, is moving our clients into more of a philanthropic, generous posture. Because I think when you do have enough, you can not only can you afford to do it, it has such a great give back to oneself. And you don't know it unless you've done it. You realize, wow, there is great benefit of giving than receiving. And so I'll ask questions like this to get the conversation started. I'll say, is there anything you care about? And that kind of sounds generic. So I don't know. And I say, well, finish this sentence. I find it absurd that we live in a world where, finish that. And so for myself, I would say, I find it absurd that we live in a world where people are struck by extreme poverty, where they don't have access to clean water or access to medical care. Or I find it absurd that some people don't have the same access to an education that I do. Or I find it absurd that children are sold into trafficking. I find it absurd. And so you can just go down the list, right? I find it absurd that you're walking around one day and next thing you know, you lost it all, that you're fleeing for your life. I find it absurd that you go to bed tonight and risk that you might not wake up free. You might lose your freedom. I find that absurd. So you just go on, and then you're trying to find what grabs you or grabs your heart. And maybe that becomes a cause. And so I think everyone should have a cause. And that's kind of where I come from, is that I want to help them discover what their cause could be and then lean into that. And that becomes a lot more fun to earn excess or to make money or to do well financially if you know it has some meaning beyond yourself. And I just think they're some of the happiest people that you could ever meet. So if we can make more happy people and that's the way to do it, then I'm all about that, Mary.
All right, so this is Harmon Kong, who's all about helping you make money so you can give it away and have a smooth entry through the pearly gates at the end of life, I think. Right. But I love it. You've given me a lot to chew on, a lot to think about, things that I've never thought of. I can tell you, I certainly didn't do this as a parent for my children growing up. I don't know that I'd heard of any such thing, so kudos to you. But I will tell you this. My granddaughter is selling Girl Scout cookies, and she sent me the link to send it so I could send it to all of my friends. And I said, no, you're the one who's going to sell these Girl Scout cookies. And I said, let's have a Zoom call. She lives outside of Washington, D.C., and with my daughter. And I said, let's have a Zoom call, and we will plot how you can do this and maybe use social media and do all of these things that you can do, but Grammy's not selling your Girl Scout cookies for you. Although I bought a few, Kim bought a few boxes. My friends did, but nobody went to town to bail her out of her quota on her
Right.
Girl Scout cookie purchase.
Wow,
So
good
maybe
for
I had a
you.
little instinct here on no.
Right.
Grammy's not selling Girl Scout cookies
Right.
today. But
Yeah.
Harmon, this has been a delight again. So tell us your book and where people can find it and where they can find you.
Yeah, it's so the book is available on everywhere where books can be sold. So Amazon is probably the most common. There is a digital version on Kindle, and there is also an Audible version out as well for those who aren't big readers. And the book's not that long, as you know, and I did that on purpose because I wanted it to be non-threatening. How you can
And
find
it would have
me?
taken you 10 years if it had been a bigger book, right?
And it probably would have been like 5 pages. Less is more, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me, if the book's too big, I drag my feet, and it takes me too long to read it. And the best books I remember are the short books that I can read over the weekend. So my hope is that a good reader could finish over the weekend. Someone who's an average reader might take a little more in a week, and then everyone else kind of falls from that. And if you're not a really good reader, go listen to the Audible. But the worksheets and everything that you can find that I spoke about are on my website, which is harmonkong.com. And there you can download the free playbook in a digital version, which I've had a lot of people tell me it's been fun to look at and do and some do it as a family. So they do it with their grown kids, and they say, let's create core values as a family, to where everyone has input. So it's not just a couple doing it, but it's the kids involved. And so you just kind of use it however works best for you, is what I say. But get started. It's never too late and never too early to start doing these. You're used to doing it, especially if you have a job. You're used to doing it at work. Just kind of bring it back home is all.
Harmon, all of us here at Sagely Speaking, thank you very much for dropping by with all of your wisdom on this subject matter. And your next book that you write, we hope you'll come back and join us once again for Sagely Speaking. But really, thank you very, very much for your insight and your ideas. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And again, Kim, thank you for the introduction to Harmon Kong. I have never met him in person, but I've definitely learned a lot by listening. So Harmon, thank you for being here. And to our sponsors, thank you very much for sponsoring us. We couldn't do what we do without you. And to you, my listeners and my watchers, thank you very much for being a part of the Sagely Speaking family. And until we meet again, be well.